Good morning and welcome to the Core Connection. I'm Mira Rubin here with you on Enlightened World Network, and today's topic is getting started. Sometimes getting started is our greatest obstacle when we have something we really have a desire and excitement about doing, but just getting started is the overwhelming challenge. So we're going to have a look at what kinds of barriers there are to getting started and how we can dissolve them to be in greater expression of who we are and our contributions to the world. Good morning, Rosalind. Welcome. Rosalind says TGIF. I get it. A long week. They're just the weeks are flying by. It's so crazy. It's great to be here with you, Rosalind, and with everybody else who's joining us. And I'm looking forward to the weekend too. Crazy acceleration of time. Anyway, getting started. Many of us have projects that are on the horizon and maybe have been there for a long time that we really want to get to, but getting started is the challenge. Like looking at the blank canvas and putting down the first brush stroke, actually getting started. And this comes from a conversation I had with an extremely creative client yesterday who has major projects ahead of them and lots of stake riding, a lot at stake in these projects. And so that in itself can be daunting when we have that internal conversation that a lot is riding on this and the product has to be a certain way, and we generate an experience of pressure for ourselves around the outcome. And so it's interesting, another client had recommended a book that I've begun reading and I'm really enjoying called The Creative Act. And it addresses this same question, which I thought was such a beautiful synchronicity. It addresses more than that question, but that's part of it is, like, what is this thing about getting started? And for this client, what was an opening in the conversation was to allow them to presence themselves, for them to allow themselves to be present to the process, to the creative act itself, rather than the outcome, rather than the product. And I was thinking of calling today's conversation process versus product, but I figured, getting started is something that so many of us are challenged with, it might resonate more. So we set up a lot of internal emotional boundaries to getting started with something, most often because we've jumped way ahead to the outcome. And we have put pressure on ourselves around what that outcome needs to be. And there's all kinds of elements of self-judgment. Am I good enough? Is it going to be worthy? What are other people going to think, et cetera, et cetera. And if we can, and that's an if, but it's worth our effort. If we can shift our focus from the product to the process, to actually engaging in something, to immersing ourselves in it. This is presuming it's something we enjoy, like a creative project or expression. If we can immerse ourselves in the process and allow that to move, to flow, what happens is we get into another state. When we're really immersed in something, we get into an altered state of sorts where we're communing with the universe. It's a collaboration. That's something that's talked about in this book, The Creative Act, as well. That really our creativity is a collaboration with life, that we are becoming a clearer channel for life to flow through and express itself, particularly in creative endeavors. And the truth is that most of what we do, or well, I don't know if that's true, lots of what we do is actually quite creative. Whether it's designing a spreadsheet or making art, there's creativity on all levels of our being and our day-to-day existence, where we're even creatively problem solving or coming up with new ideas about something, or communicating. Even when in true communication, it's a creative, a generative act where you're actually really listening closely and responding rather than listening to hear what you should say next, kind of thing, right? So let's focus on what it means to get started. Part of the barrier to getting started, maybe all of it, is, well, okay, internal conversations and external conditions, both. So interestingly, a lot of people need a space to be in a certain condition in order to allow themselves the freedom to really immerse themselves. So you might need your tools of the trade. You might arranged in a certain way. You might need clear space, clear desk space, for instance. There are many distractions that we allow ourselves to be taken away by and diverted from our intentions. And when some of those things, some of those conditions are merely distractions. Some of those things are defenses against actually getting started, ways to avoid things. We've often spoken about how when you're in a situation that you're trying to avoid, sometimes your house is immaculately clean because it gives you the sense of something productive that you're doing to clean. And in a way, it can allow you to justify not doing the thing that needs doing or that you're desiring to do. Other times, it's important to put things in a certain order so that you can create spaciousness for yourself. It's interesting because I've watched myself in both of those conditions, where I need to create some space so that I have the internal space actually locally to what it is I'm doing. And then there are other times where I will go attend to things that have been unattended to for a really long time, and they could remain unattended to in order to distract myself from actually getting started. So when we talk about that getting started, what are the other barriers besides besides the circumstantial, because we might have all these demands. The thing is that we often manufacture demands and we don't prioritize them in a way that ultimately serves us. We'll say everything else is important, and when all that's taken care of, then I'll get to this thing that I've been wanting to do for a long time. Well, the truth is that there will always be other things that come up that assert themselves as important. So we get to step through that to prioritize the thing that it is we want to do, and to look at why are we not prioritizing it? Like, what's the story that we're telling ourselves that allows us to make everything else more important than this thing that is calling to us? That's a valuable question. And it allows us to become present to our values and our either alignment or misalignment with our values. When we look at, wow, this is something that I've been saying I'm going to do for myself, and everything else gets in the way, and I'm being pulled in all these different directions. We hear a lot about the power of yes, say yes to everything. And so many of us say yes to too much. And then we're overwhelmed. And then the things that are our true priorities, that are in true alignment with ourselves, we neglect. So this same person came to a revelation where they recognized that they had committed, or someone had asked for them to help them move, and they were inclined to do that, and they have this project that has been calling for their attention, that actually requires that has a degree of urgency to it, that they had been neglecting and doing all these other things for other people, but not doing what they needed to do to take care of themselves, and to prioritize the things that were important for their own survival. Survival is it not on the level of, if I don't do this, I'm going to die kind of survival, but something that was going to be able to provide for them in a way that they need to be provided for. So it's interesting, in our group gathering for my coaching practice the other day, one of the members said that they thought it would be a great idea to start a Volunteers Anonymous, for people who volunteer for all these things for others, and then are overstressed and overwhelmed and overextended. And I thought it was such a wonderful observation and recognition, that in our desire to make a difference and to give to others, we often deeply neglect ourselves. And we can use all of those things to justify not getting started on the things that we need to do. So it's making space, space in time, space in physical space. And then let's say all of that's handled, and there we are ready to get started, and there's nothing. Like, there's this anxiety and maybe this fear. We get to look at, well, what is generating that anxiety or fear? And most often it's projecting outward beyond the process, and really looking at and prejudging the outcome, the result. And if we can recontextualize the experience of whatever it is we're getting started on, if we can recontextualize it as an exploration rather than dictated by a particular outcome we're trying to achieve, all of a sudden the pressure is radically released and the quality of the product, the chances of the quality of the product being good quality are greatly enhanced. Why? Because we're connecting with that collaborative energy available to us in the universe when we're truly engaged, when we're outside ourselves. So that's the thing too, is when we make the creative process about us, it can be really stifling and paralyzing because there's always judgment. And when we just allow ourselves to be in the process, when we allow it to be an expression, we allow ourselves to be a channel for whatever that is, then we have the freedom to be that vehicle. So, for example, if I made these mornings about me and about what you might think, and am I saying the right thing, and am I saying it the right way, and is this a topic that you care about, and what did maybe I could do it better. If I got hung up in all of that, I would never say a word. And really, like, the ability to be here with you is getting outside myself and just allowing whatever comes through in its way to come through collaboratively. Like, I might have an idea. Actually, I sit before our sessions together and I just say, so what's today's topic? And it comes because I'm out of the way. If I were trying to control it, it would be a nightmare. And it would be a nightmare for me, and it would probably end up being a nightmare for you. And there is a grace that is provided us by, we can call it source, our higher self, consciousness, energy. Some of you may choose to call it God. Whatever it is, when we allow ourselves to be in service to that, when we allow ourselves to be an expression of that, when we allow ourselves to be an expression of life and get out of the way, we can recognize it's not about us. And when we know that it's not about us, we can just be present to that process and come what may. And then we can periodically step back and look at that and see if it serves the objective in the way that we intended. And when we can look at that and evaluate that also from the space, not that it's about us, but that it's an expression of life, we can also maybe play with it, evaluate it, massage it, maneuver it, adjust it, without getting so wrapped up in its implications for who we are and what we are. So as far as getting started, what we're looking at is creating the physical space, creating the emotional space, and creating the space to connect beyond ourselves. It's really getting out of the way. And maybe making it less meaningful, making the outcome less meaningful, making the I in it less prominent. And then we can be awed by what comes through. It's like, where did that come from? Half the time, the things that come out of my mouth, I don't know where they came from. And oftentimes, I don't know what I'm thinking till I say it. I don't know if you have that experience. It's kind of wild, to just dive in and then let it unfold. There's an awe around that. There's an awe to allowing ourselves to be a vehicle of life. And I've spoken about this before, in terms of identity, it's still emergent for me. And I imagine it will be through the rest of my life to have one's identity be who I am as life expressing itself through this unique vehicle. And then there's always this discovery about, well, what does life have to say today? What does life look like in this moment? And being present, finding ways to allow ourselves to be present in the moment with whatever the emotions are. They might be anxiety, might be fear, might be grief, might be whatever, to be present in the getting started of something. Might be tremendous enthusiasm and joy. But to immerse ourselves in these experiences, to dive in and let it unfold, and also be able to be the privileged observer of what's going to emerge, can be just such a wonderful, awe-inspiring, awesome experience, to be able to look at what emerges. There's this cultivated sense of wonder that is one of the greatest gifts that we can give ourselves, no matter what our situation or circumstance. As long as we can cultivate this ability to stop for a moment and breathe in what's so, with the eyes of a child, with the eyes of innocence, without the interpretation. Just to stop and say, oh my gosh, look at this. Look at this. Stand back and be here. It's funny, to say stand back and be here. Like step back so we can actually be in the present. But to see the bigger picture, to see the relationship between things. And even in the getting started, the challenges to getting started, to step back and recognize, wow, there's all this stuff going on. I feel nauseous, or I feel jittery and anxious, and what's going on? I'm hearing these things, I'm recognizing, oh my gosh, there's all this internal chatter. What's going on with that? And all those things, rather than being stopped by them unconsciously, we can recognize them and be in awe of them, find curiosity around them, and use them as a doorway in, as a way that we can step into the very thing that we've had this resistance around. When we recognize the story, that's the beginning of our ability to transcend it. if the story lives unexamined, then it's working on us. When we start to examine, we get to work on it. And oftentimes just the recognition of that story is enough to dissolve it. And that's something that I see over and over and over again in the core connection work, that by naming something, and not, so here, the naming something, it's a double-edged sword, because we can name it, and then in acknowledging it, recognizing it, that can allow it to release. And the potential pitfall of naming something is that then we're concretizing it, we're making it concrete, we're making it something, we're giving it existence on another level. And oftentimes we get really attached to it, and we then make whatever that naming is our story. And then it's still working on us, but on an even more intense level. So I'm just present to the paradox in that, and how to navigate that. How do you know? How do you know when you're naming it, recognizing it, and allowing it then to release, versus naming it so that then you own it and then identify with it, and then it wields even more power. It's such a balance, right? We're always walking this tightrope of meaning and interpretation and being. It's such an interesting dance. And so the weekend's coming, and maybe we get to dance with the paradox and get started, see what it is about getting started on something that you've been thinking of for quite some time, that you've been wanting to get rolling with, and look at what's been in the way, and how much of that is real and how much of it is fabricated, and what can you do to grease the wheels, so to speak. What can you do in terms of recognition and release or whatever to actually get started on whatever that is? And that's the invitation. Let's get started and enjoy that process, and let it be processed, let it unfold, and maybe allow yourself the awe of all the machinations that go into even the simplest of things. So Rosalind says, sit in the space. Indeed, yes, sometimes like sit with the discomfort. So that's it for today. I accept that I'm saying sit with the discomfort. When you sit with the discomfort and allow yourself to really be present to it, the discomfort changes. Everything changes. Things are changing all the time. They don't remain static and fixed, even though we think so. We impose the notion that it's the same, when in fact, it's not. Life's a river. We are a river, and we're changing from moment to moment to moment. So now that's it. I wish you all a wonderful weekend. I'm Mira Rubin. This is the Core Connection, and I go live here each weekday morning on the Enlightened World Network Facebook page and YouTube channel at 9 a.m. Eastern. And I invite you to check out the other wonderful, wonderful, heartfelt programming on Enlightened World Network and Enlightened World Living. And until next time, so much love to you.